welcome back to Real Time JC, episode 45 and part 5 in our Strength in the Storm series. This is the final step in our Strength in the Storm series, and it is titled, He Will See Me Through. Whew, guys, this step is so important to grasp because when God gives us a vision, when God gives us a task to complete, when we are walking in obedience with Him, the enemy will attack. The enemy will 100% cause you suffering, cause you situations and circumstances to create doubt and fear in your life. First, before we dig in, I am fired up about this one. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for these full-length episodes. Also, for the daily digs, they are 1-minute digs into Jesus, Monday through Friday. Oh my goodness, they come out about 7 a.m.-ish in whatever, actually, it's not in whatever time zone you're at. It's like 7 a.m. in whatever time zone I'm at. And I'm in a couple of them periodically, usually Central Time or Phoenix Time. But don't forget to subscribe. All right, let's just sort of recap episodes 1, 2, 3, and 4, or parts 1, 2, 3, 4 in the Strength in the Storm series. I think that's important. So we are in Matthew 14, 22 through 36, and this is the story about Jesus walking on the water. So he had been up on the mountain praying, processing with God, probably praying for us. Who knows? I'm sure that's what was happening. He told the disciples to get in the boat. Don't stay with the crowds. Let the crowds be. You guys get in the boat. And then a storm appeared. So the disciples ended up being in the middle of this lake. I think it was the Sea of Galilee, but the Sea of Galilee has a couple of different names. So it was a lake something, something or other. So they end up in the middle of the lake. I'm trying to imagine this, you guys, because I'm sure they're smart men. But how did they end up in the middle of the lake when this storm came upon them? You know, I'm thinking about this right now because we have a lake around here in the Arizona, Phoenix area called Lake Pleasant. And it could be beautiful and sunny, no clouds in the sky, and you're in the middle of the lake and suddenly a storm comes upon you and you're just in the middle of it. So I think maybe I could see how that could be, how the disciples would end up there. Otherwise, I'm like, why did you end up there? I don't know. So at any rate, they end up in the middle of the lake. The storms are upon them. The waves are crashing. The lightning is happening. The wind is blowing. And they're getting afraid. They can't get out of it. And the shore is so far away, they can't see it. And suddenly, they see a figure walking on the water. Okay, who in their right mind would imagine that it was an actual person walking on the water? The disciples thought it was a ghost. I'm pretty certain I would have thought it was a ghost or a figment of my imagination. Peter calls out to the figment, to the figure on the water, and he's like, Jesus, is that you? It kind of looks like you. I'm just adding my own narrative into this too, guys. He didn't actually say that, but he did call out to Jesus. And Jesus said, yes, it's me. Come, Peter, come to me. Peter, in all of his amazing faith, jumps out of the boat and starts walking on the water towards Jesus. As he was keeping his eyes on Jesus, he was going one step further, walking on the water. And then his eyes went off of Jesus and he started to notice everything, all the storm that was going on around him. He started to sink, and then Jesus picked him up out of the water and they walked back to the boat and the storms calmed. So I'm imagining this, as we walk through each one of the steps. Let me remind you what those steps are. Number 1 was he brought me here. He brings us to the storms sometimes. Sometimes they're storms of perfection where he's developing us, where we're growing. Sometimes they're storms of correction where we're out of the will of God. And like Jonah. Number 2 was he's praying for me and imagining. So just imagine Jesus sitting in the next room, interceding for you to the Father. I can't even imagine. Like literally, I'm telling you to imagine it, and I can't even imagine it because it's such a great, an incredible thing to imagine. So that was step 2. Step 3 was he will come to me. So sometimes we feel like we're deserted as we're walking through the storms and the hard times of life. And even David complained in one of the Psalms, like, God, I feel like you're so far away. But by the end of that, he obviously realized and worked his way through those emotions, that Jesus is always here. He always comes to us in the storms of life. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, it says in Isaiah 43:2. So the reasoning why sometimes it feels like we're waiting and waiting and waiting, or we feel like he's deserted us or that we're alone, is because literally he waits until all human hope is gone so that we can learn to rely on him and our faith grows in those instances. So we talked about that. Part 4 was he will help me grow. And this is literally like the whole purpose of a storm, especially if you're in a storm of perfection. And literally the storm of correction, guys, like we, in every single one of those scenarios that we have, in whatever storms, there's different types of storms of perfection, different types of storms of correction. It's all to help us grow. Like all of those are to help us grow. So we talked about that. This one, the he will see me through. If Jesus says come, then that word is going to accomplish its intended purpose. Since he is the author and finisher of our faith, whatever he starts, he completes. It tells us that he's the author and finisher of our faith in Hebrews 12:2. So I'm going to give you a little story. And this is why I'm so pumped up about and on fire about this step. God gave me a complete download of a project in my life that will occur, a ministry of sorts that will occur in the future. And this literally happened just a couple weeks ago. I had recently resigned from a ministry position that I absolutely loved and adored. And it was a connections director at a church in Surprise and a special events project manager. So I had two, in essence, almost like 2 full-time jobs in one. And I loved it. I mean, it was really a focus on developing culture, helping people feel connected, helping them feel welcome, helping them feel valued, developing volunteer systems. And then on the other end, it was organizing and managing big events that our church put on for the community. And again, helping create that culture. And I loved that so much. Well, along came October-ish time, and God just opened the door and kicked me out because there was something greater. There was something more that he was developing in me that was being built on that foundation. I had already had my real estate license in Arizona, and so I started to focus on that for provision. And come about December-ish, early December, I started to feel an urge, a nudge to go get my certification in health and life coaching. And I could sense that God was going to use that in the future with what already I had been doing and the foundation he had built. Also, guys, my original career was in musical theater in the entertainment world. And I spent a good 20 years being on stage and acting and singing and giving speeches, monologues and all sorts of things. And so I'm seeing all of these things, there's that, and then there was the ministry aspect, and then there's the health and life coaching certifications that I'm still in school for. And then there's the real estate world. And then I felt God was nudging me to get my license in Missouri, real estate license in Missouri as well. So I've got dink, 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 dink. All of these things that don't really make sense altogether, but I knew in and of themselves that I was supposed to walk into those areas, different areas of life. And I'm like, what? Why? Well, I started this channel, as you guys know, back in October, and God is, oh my gosh, certainly grown and developed me in ways that I never thought possible through just processing my emotions with you, processing the things that God is working on in me with you. A couple weeks ago, as I was really praying and seeking Him, He gave it all to me. He downloaded literally an entire project, and how everything that I'm doing right now, everything that I've been a part of, all the ways, like the entertainment world, the ministry world, the real estate world, the life coaching world, all of it, how it's going to come together. And I was blown away. Blown away, not overwhelmed to the point of anxiety, but overwhelmed to the point of celebrating of this is incredible. I can't wait to see how you're going to do this. How are you going to do this? I don't know, but I'm leaning on you. I have no worry about it. I have no anxiety about this at all until Sunday, Monday-ish of this last week. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I don't know how I'm going to survive. I knew it was an attack, you guys, because it was something that came on very suddenly. Maybe I should do a video on ways to separate an attack from the enemy and just life in general, because the enemy is not everywhere. Satan is not everywhere, and his minions aren't everywhere. Sometimes it is just life and circumstances that happen that don't have to do with the enemy, but the enemy can work through those things, or it is a direct attack on a believer. This was a direct attack. Number one, like I said, it came on very suddenly. It was like one moment I was completely had a free feeling inside, that freedom that you feel where you're just like experiencing joy, experiencing life. And the next moment, you are completely weighed down, completely burdened, completely in fear and in doubt and in worry about your future. That's what happened to me. I was going through every bit of worry and fear that you can even imagine. And I'm back here in Missouri. And I don't think my parents even knew because I didn't share it with them. I'm at my parents' house. This was crazy, you guys. I spent all of Sunday that way and all of Monday. Finally, on Monday, I reached out to one of my brothers who is an incredible prayer warrior. He's one I go to when I'm needing sound, godly advice. I went to him. I didn't actually talk with him, but he was like, hey, call me if you need me and I will pray with you. But just knowing that he was praying for me right then was like huge. I also, a few hours later, went to a spiritual coach. She's kind of like my spiritual life coach. She's awesome. And she really helped me through. So here's the thing. Here's what they both and what God showed me in this time. If he's given you something, a huge purpose, and you know it's from God, number one, you will receive the attack of the enemy, because suffering and glory kind of go together. Look at the example of Jesus on the cross. Yes, this the example. God was glorified through the suffering and death of Jesus on the cross. If that is not an example to us walking through storms of life, I don't know what is. But in that example, the greatest example, did this verse in Hebrews 12:2, the author and finisher of our faith, what he starts, he completes. Did that happen? Yes. Yes, it happens. We may fail along the way as we're walking through these storms of life, as we're getting attacked by the enemy. We may fail, but in the end, God will succeed. And why is that? Because there is no failure in the kingdom of God. He accomplishes everything he asks us to do, those dreams he puts in our hearts, that purpose that He's placed in us, He will succeed. What He starts, He will finish. Here's the cool thing about the story of Jesus walking on the water. Jesus and Peter walked on the water together. Together. You guys, together. Which means that God is always with us. Jesus and Peter walked on the water together and went to the ship. So as you're walking through those storms of life, what I realized this last week was, there are going to be times where we're walking through a storm. In my case, it was a storm of perfection. He wanted me to see these things. He wanted me to know that He was still there. He wanted me to lean on biblical community and the relationships that He's put in my life to help me grow. He wanted me to know that He is always there in the midst of all of the waves and the lightning and the winds and the scary darkness. He is always there. Peter's experience turned out to be a blessing to the other disciples as well as to himself. When they saw the power of Jesus, when they saw His power in conquering and calming the storm, they could only fall down and worship Him. My hope is that today, as you have listened to this story of mine, of that attack of the enemy, and knowing you're seeing me on the other side, you're seeing me on the side of walking back with Jesus into the boat, that you can also know and be transformed by this story. Fall down and worship Him and know that if He's doing this for me, He's doing it for you too. And that is powerful. That is so powerful. So powerful. All right, so I'm going to leave you there today. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I think is important for you to know. I don't think so. It's just so cool. It's so cool what God reveals to us in perfect timing too. So I'm praying for you today. If you're walking through a storm, know that He will see you through. There's something in your life that He is finishing. He has started something in your life and He's going to see it through. He is going to finish it. So know that you're not alone, that He is going to grab your hand, pull you out of the water and walk you back to the boat. Because remember, if you're sinking, you haven't yet drowned. You're not done. You're not dead. You are not defeated. All right, guys, thanks for joining me on today's episode of Real Time JC. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.